Hi, this is Scott, Kilo Sierra 6 Delta Alpha Yankee, and for today's video we're back with another Yaesu FT-60 Operator Series video. For today's video we're going to expand on the information that I covered in the last video where I showed you how to put a couple of simplex frequencies into the radio and save them as memory channels. For today, the first part of what we're going to be doing is going to look exactly like that, but since we're going to be talking about programming in repeaters and saving those as memory channels, it's going to involve a couple of extra steps like tones, offsets, offset direction, etc. But in the end, I'm going to show you the two different ways of programming repeaters, or the two different types of repeaters to program for. Now, this is going to rely on or be predicated on some existing knowledge of repeaters and how repeaters work on your part. This isn't the video to tell you how repeaters work and what tone or tone squelch means. But having said that, I had another operator series video I was doing where I mentioned exactly the same thing and said I would do a follow-on video where I covered repeater basics, and I never got around to that. Well, this has prompted me because this is my third or fourth try at doing this video, and I keep digressing into areas that make the video long and explain things that a lot of you already know, but some of you don't. So I'm going to do that as a follow-on video unrelated to this operator series, so it should release shortly after this video. I'm going to cover some of the basic details of repeaters, but for today it's going to be the basic two types of repeaters, tone or tone squelch. Now, that relates, of course, to the tones and whether or not they're applied to just the transmit frequency or the transmit and receive frequency. And there are reasons for that that I'll explain in the follow-on video, but if you know, you know. Now, I do understand that there are some more advanced repeater applications. I'm not going to cover those today because I don't want to make things needlessly complicated. A lot of the stuff that I would talk about and I will in a more advanced topic later on in this series, they apply in very rare circumstances. In fact, advanced repeater setup or any repeater setup other than the two ways I'm going to show you today, I've personally never encountered even once. So I know they're out there, and you might have some specialized applications in your area, and sometimes those repeater owners get really creative just to make things difficult on you, so they get a certain type that comes around. Yeah, and also a reminder, this is analog only. This doesn't relate to D-Star, C4FM, or DMR type repeaters. So that being that, let's go ahead and proceed forward with programming in a couple of repeaters. So there's some details you're going to need before you start. And the first thing you're going to want to know before you program this in, and I like to map it out on some paper ahead of time if I have a chance, but first thing I want to know is what am I going to name this repeater. I'm going to make this first one real simple so I don't have to put in too many characters when I name the channel, but first one's going to be T1. And the first detail that you need to know whenever you program in a repeater is what is the repeater's receive frequency, or RX. In this case, the receive frequency is going to be 440.400 megahertz. So that's the receive. The transmit is going to be handled by the offset settings that you put in here, but I will show you to the side what the actual transmit frequency would be for this with the offset. So the next thing you need to know is what is the offset and what is the offset value. So UHF, you can kind of cheat, and the radio is actually going to help you in that case. Now, as a reminder, ARS, or automatic repeater shift, is turned off on this radio for reasons I discussed in the last video. But it does still keep a certain amount of intuitiveness to it, so it will help you along with the offset value, and I'll show you when we get into the programming part. But the offset is going to be a plus offset, and you have a choice of plus or minus, and that's going to be 5 megahertz. The next thing you need to know is what is the applicable CTCSS or DCS tones. In this case, it's CTCSS, and it's 103.5 hertz. Now, is that going to be tone or tone squelch? In this case, we know that it's tone. And what tone means is you're only applying the CTCSS tone to the transmit frequency, and that's that subaudible tone that travels with your signal to unlock the repeater and make it operate for you. And it's only done on the transmit side. You don't have anything on your radio that's going to require a tone be sent before the radio opens and receives the traffic. So there you go. And I'll be talking a lot about these two things in that Repeater 101 video. But that's all you need to know to program the radio for this first channel. The next channel is going to be T2. And in this case, the receive frequency is going to be 146.880 megahertz. The offset in this case is going to be a minus, and it's going to be 0.6. And this is pretty standard. For UHF is almost always, and at least it's been in every case I've ever encountered, it's been +5. For 2 meter VHF, and I should have specified 70 centimeter UHF, for 2 meter VHF, it's going to be 0.6 megahertz. Now, of course, if it was 1.25 meter, it would be different. So you have different values for each of the bands. And okay, so we have a minus 0.6. The the tone is going to be 103.5 hertz again, but in this case it's going to be TSQL, which is tone squelch. Now what that means is 103.5, 103.5. Now if you're one of those people that has looked at repeater book and you see all these repeaters that just have one number for your offset, but you see these and it's 103.5/103.5, they don't ever tell you what that means. What that means is this is a TSQL or tone squelch repeater setup, and you're going to need, you don't have to, and I'll talk about more of that in Repeater 101, but it's going to be helpful if you want it to operate for you properly and not be interfered by adjacent repeaters. You're going to need to have a tone on the receive side as well. And it just, quite simply, all repeaters that are operating on a repeater set that starts with the 146.880, that's the receive frequency for that repeater. If there are repeaters that are nearby, close enough for you to pick up, even though they might have a different CTCSS tone to open them, you'll hear, if you don't have this second tone put on your receive side, you're going to hear everything on that other repeater. And it can get confusing. I had it happen to me once before, and I'll explain all of that in the Repeater 101 video. But those are the two. So first one, 440.400 plus 5 megahertz offset, 103.5 for my CTCSS tone. Of course, if it was a DCS tone, it might be something like D025, but in this case, that's what we're working with, and that's a tone setup. For the second one, 146.880 minus 0.6, 103.5 hertz CTCSS tone, and TSQL setup. So, knowing that information, I'll show you how simple it is to set this up. Now again, as a reminder, automatic repeater shift is turned off. I don't know if I mentioned that early on or not, but I leave it off always so it doesn't mess up my simplex side. Talked about that in the last video, but it's off on this one as well. So we're going to have a couple of extra steps, but like I say, it's not that much of a problem. So as we know, if we want to program anything into memory, we know, or into a memory channel, we know we need to be in VFO mode. So let me check that by pressing the VM. I saw memory come up, and I see this is my indicator that I'm in memory mode. That's shows channel slot 1. So I'm going to press VM again, go back to VFO, and let's put this first frequency in. So it's 440400. To save this, we know we're going to long press FW. It's going to be flashing a channel. We could, there's something on 1. As you know, you can just cycle through and select the channel you want. Let's go ahead and leave it on 1. So I'm going to short press to save the selection. I get mem in. We're back to VFO again. I go to memory mode, and I see channel slot 1 is now 440.400. Before I go on, I want to name it so I can find it when I'm looking for it again. If I had a bunch of channels or a bunch of frequencies in here, it makes it a little easier. There's only one for now. But to go into name, we're going to go to FW and 0. We're going to go to item number 28. Let me turn this so I can see. NMWRT, which is name right. We're going to short press FW. We see our 6 dots here. We're going to make the first one blink by short pressing FW again. We're going to rotate the knob at the top here, the channel selector knob, and we're going to look for the letter T. And there we are, short press to advance to the next selection. We're going to be looking for the dash. And now we're going to be looking for the number 1. There we are. Now we have 3 dots remaining. I want to eliminate all of those. I long press FW. When the dots disappear, press BTT. And now T1 is the name of channel 1. So let me go ahead and start putting the details in now. If it was a simplex channel, we would just use it and go on, but we need to add this extra stuff in here. So we want to go back to menu, FW and 0, and the first place we want to go is item number 38. And this is going to be rpt.mod. Now what this is going to allow you to do is set up your offset direction, or whether or not you want this memory channel to operate as a repeater channel or not. So go to FW to select the submenu, and first we have RPT off. If I wanted this to function only as a simplex channel, there you go. It won't apply any negative or positive offset, but we have 2 other selections, and that's going to be minus and plus. Now in this case, this is a plus, and that's what we want to select, so I press FW, and we're good to go. So let's move on to item number 45, and 45 is shift, and this is going to allow you to set your offset value or amount. So you press FW, and the amount, this is where this is still, even though automatic repeater shift is turned off, it's still intuitive enough to know that this is a 2 meter UHF repeater frequency, and that if any offset amount is applied, 5 megahertz is the correct amount, and it did right here. You have a 5. Now when we go to this 2 meter channel at the bottom, you'll see it knows what it's doing there as well. So we'll get to that in a minute. So 5 is good to go, so press FW. And now we're going to move to item number 48. And this is SQL.TYP, or Squelch type. This is where we're going to set either tone, tone squelch, etc. So I'll show you the selections there. So we have off. The next one is tone. That means it's going to apply any CTCSS or it's going to apply it to the transmit side only. Tone squelch is going to apply that CTCSS to not only the transmit frequency, but also the receive side of the radio. So it will only pick up traffic coming in on that receive frequency that has a corresponding subaudible CTCSS tone. Otherwise, your radio will not break squelch and you will not hear anything. Move on, and we have DCS. But what we're going to be dealing with, and what you'll be dealing with most of the time, is either tone or tone squelch. Now in this case, we know it's tone, and we only need that applied there. And it is important to know, because this repeater is not set up to send a tone. So if you set up tone squelch in this repeater, you'll never hear it. So it is very important to know which is which. So tone is correct. And then we're going to move on to item number 50. And this is tone frequency, or TNFRQ. So this is where we're going to set this CTCSS tone. So we press there, and we start at 100, although it does go down, but it starts by default at 100. What I'm looking for is 103.5. And then we short press FW to save that. And we are good to go at this point. Now, there's one last value that you might look into, or might need to look into if it's called for. But pretty much so you have wide or narrow band. And that's a whole topic in and of itself. But for the most part, wideband is going to be what you're going to be using in nearly all cases. But if for some reason it called for a narrowband setup, you could go to item number 55, which is going to be WID.NAR, which is wide or narrow. Press that. By default, it's wide, but you also have the narrow selection, but wide is good to go. So knowing that it's defaulted to wide, that is probably something you're not going to have to go to unless it's specifically called for by that repeater. So at this point, we are good to go. So let's go ahead and chunk the repeater and see if we get any noise out of it. There we go. I'll turn it up a little louder so you can hear it. Okay, that repeater is now operating. I would call in for a radio check on the... Well, all right, there's a repeater ID. I'd call in for a radio check, but my signal under these LED lights is going to be absolutely horrible. So we're not going to mess with that. So we're going to now go to T2 and program that one in. So as a reminder, program anything in, you need to start in VFO mode. So let's put in 146880. Let's go ahead and save that by long pressing FW. It's flashing 2 as the next available memory channel. That's good to go, so short press that. See if it saved it. So we're back to VFO, so let's go to memory mode and see what we have. And it's showing up on channel slot 2. There's 1 and there's 2. Let's go ahead and name it real quick. Go to FW and 0, item number 28. Name right, press, short press to get the little dots moving. Turn the knob at the top here, and we'll look for a T. Almost there. Let's look for our little dash. And let's look for the number 2. And there we are. 3 dots remaining. We eliminate those dots by long pressing the FW key. And then we save it by pressing the PTT. Boom. So channel 1 is T1, channel 2 is T2. So let's put in the details for this one. So let's go to menu, and we want to go to 38. Our repeater mode, I guess. So let's short press that. And in this case, we are looking for a minus is going to be our offset. It's going to be a minus bias. So that's that. Let's move on to item number 45. And that's going to be shift. And see, this is that intuitive part. Remember in the last one, it defaulted to 5 megahertz. In this case, it recognizes this as a 2 meter receive frequency. So it knows 2 meter requires a 0.6 megahertz offset. So it's already good to go. So that's one area where the automatic repeater shift is sort of still there. It just doesn't apply it. But it's ready to go when you need it. So nothing to change there. Now let's go to 48. That's going to be our squelch type. Now we know in this case, tone squelch, so that's going to apply the CTCSS to both transmit and receive. So we press that. And we go past tone to TSQL. Short press that to save it. And then the last part is going to be item number 50, which is going to be the tone frequency. So let's press this, and this is once again going to be 103.5. Short press, exit, and now we should get something out of this repeater. Let me hold this up here so get it behind the lights here. There you go. Again, LEDs were interfering. I hope you heard that. Okay. Did work, it just didn't at this angle. And real quick note, by the way, the reason I don't do a whole lot of transmission with these lights on is LED lights are absolutely death to radio signals. It'll mess up your receive pretty bad. It'll definitely screw up your transmit really bad. So if you're in a situation where you can't figure out why your signal quality sucks so badly and you've got an LED light of some kind nearby, that might be your culprit there. But did confirm both repeaters are now working. At least they're chunking the repeater. So they're opening the repeater. I know I'm getting something back. So there you go. Good to go. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Very, very simple process. Doesn't take all that much time to set up and work with. Again, 2 things. There are more advanced repeater setups out there that I'll cover as advanced topics later, and also that sort of repeater 101 thing for you guys that are kind of challenged a little bit by some of the stuff that I might be mentioning. I understand that because, like I said, I had the exact same thing happen back in the day. I wasn't clued in on the difference between tone and tone squelch. Didn't know that you needed to have, in some cases, a tone applied to both of the frequencies, and it caught me short, and I learned a lesson that day. So I'll cover that in a lot more detail in the follow-on video for that. But that's pretty much it. So we'll move on to the next topic in the series in the next day or two. So I will thank you for watching and or listening. This is Scott, Kilo Sierra 6, Delta Alpha Yankee from Visalia, California. Have a wonderful day.